Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Breakouts Bonanza. We've got 4 different breakout episodes, one for each position, and we start with quarterbacks, and we bring in a special guest, Joe Pisapia of FantasyPros. Joe, what do you think of that super cool video intro? That wasn't there last time you came on.
It wasn't. I can see you've been working very hard in the video department there. Adam's put in the extra hours, guys. I hope you appreciate all this work he's doing just to make everybody look so good.
So there's 2 things that I know for sure. 1, Adam had nothing to do with that video. 2, he's not been working very hard.
I
tried, Adam.
Working on my tennis game. But yeah, I did a lot with that video. I was like, they were like, what kind of music? I was like, why don't we do something like, and they took that from me. So anyway,
Joe, you are a well-renowned football coach in the state of New Jersey.
Yes, true.
Let me ask you a question as a coach. Would you rather have an athlete who played a sport in high school, but has not really played it much since?
Mm-hmm. And that's 20 years ago, by the way.
Or someone who's picked up a sport later in life and practices all the time?
Ooh, that's a good one. I guess it matters on how good the athlete was in high school. You know what I mean? Like if we're talking a guy who was really good or a gal who was really good, but
let's focus on the sport. So the sport would be tennis.
The sport was on tennis that I think I want the guy who's practicing or the gal that's practicing lately.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. All right. Here's my first question.
But when Adam says tennis, he really means pickleball. So let's be honest.
Oh, it's tennis.
Yeah.
Here's my first question. Is the 2 industry breakouts, I guess, the ones that people are so excited about are C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson. Is everybody on board with Stroud and Richardson as top 6, 7 quarterbacks? You know, they are going as top 7 guys. Maybe depends on format for Richardson, but I'm Stroud, I guess. Is everybody on board with these 2 industry breakouts?
I am. Yeah. I think so. I mean, I think the thing is with Stroud, Heath and I were talking about before the show, Stroud, I think, had his breakout last year. So is there more to come? Perhaps. The offensive line had some issues with health early on last year. And as they got healthier, certainly they got more explosive as an offense. But I think just if you're banking on a repeat of what Stroud gave you last year, you'd be very happy. The Richardson one, that is the breakout where we put really big expectations. I don't know about you guys, but I think he's up to the task, especially Shane Steichen in that offense. But what do you guys think about Anthony Richardson in terms of living up to the hype? I think he can.
If he stays healthy. I mean, that's the biggest question, right? So he Shane Steichen kind of put gas on our flames of, he's going to run. You don't tell Steph Curry to stop shooting. Anytime you hear that comparison, it's going to get people excited. So, he looked a little rusty in the preseason. I don't really worry about that, such a small sample size. But I think if you get 13 plus games out of that guy, his points per game should be in the top 5 range. And if he plays 17 games, I mean, we should be looking at a guy who could challenge to have the most rushing yards at the position, challenge to have the most rushing touchdowns at the position, and be a 3,500 plus passer. Now, I do think we should qualify at the beginning because Joe's rankings and analysis on this could be different. We talk about 6 points for passing touchdowns as opposed to 4. So that may change things a little bit. But in any event, yes, I think Richardson is certainly in the realm of having that type of season that we all covet, and that's why he's being drafted so high.
I think I'm going to be the poo-pooer, but I don't have Stroud as a top 6 or 7 quarterback. He's my QB9. And I really have felt the urge in 1 quarterback leagues to move the rookies ahead of him just because he is like in that group of guys that's not going to run very much. And so he's got to have a really big number in terms of passing yards and passing touchdowns to put together a top 5 season, especially if you're in the 4-point per pass touchdown world. So I think he's a very good quarterback, a very good starter, maybe slightly better than he was last year, but I would not call him a breakout this year. No.
I also have him at 9, Heath. Just so we're kind of, I don't think that's a hot take or weird. I think that's just a matter of looking at, we've seen already Joe Burrow, have monstrous seasons and be great. We saw C.J. Stroud do that. I think the difference with Stroud this year now is expectations. And I always feel like that's a little bit harder. It's always easy when you're playing the underdog, when you got the chip on your shoulder and you're coming to the league and nobody's expecting you. Now they're expecting you. How do you play under those circumstances? How does Stephon Diggs work himself into? Already some questions about that. So there's a lot to unpack there when it comes to Stroud. And if Stroud's going to go as QB6, I'd much rather prefer to wait and just take Jordan Love a few rounds later.
So C.J. Stroud was on pace for 186 rushing yards last year, maybe 189 rushing yards, but 189 rushing yards. Over the last 5 seasons, there have been 3 quarterbacks who have finished as a top 5 quarterback in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues with fewer than 200 rushing yards. And again, that was what Stroud was on pace for. Those 3 quarterbacks were Aaron Rodgers, who was QB1 in 2020, Tom Brady, who was QB2 in 2021, and Matthew Stafford, who was QB5 in 2021. 2021 being a bonkers year for quarterbacks. All 3 of those guys threw 41 or more touchdown passes, and they did that. No, I guess one of those was a 17-game season. But yeah, there haven't been many. Stroud, though, he was number 8 per game last year. Number 9 if you include Joe Flacco, but if you remove Flacco, he was number 8 per game. But Jamie, maybe you want to make the case here. If you take only the games that Tank Dell played more than 50% of the snaps, he scored 20 or more points in 6 of 8 games, 19.3 or more in 7 of 8 games. He was much better in those games. So yeah, I mean, they're not projecting really the next step for him, and you are.
I mean, I think he can get to the 23, 24 point per game range. I don't think he's going to get to the 28 or 29 point per game range. So if you're expecting that, then I think you're asking too much. But, look, Dak Prescott averaged 24.4 points per game, not exactly running the ball to a very high level. So you give him Stephon Diggs, like, Joe said, which I think is something that not a lot of people mention, is the offensive line was a disaster to start the season last year. And he was managing his way through that. And then they got healthy, unfortunately, around the same time, Tank Dell goes down. And so now with a more robust receiving core and, look, Joe Mixon, whatever you think of him, maybe, and I don't know if it's going to prove itself, but maybe a better pass catcher. I think he is, but maybe a better pass catcher than Devin Singletary. So just another weapon as well. And so now you're putting this offense maybe on a different level, and he's very efficient. We know that. Doesn't turn the ball over very much. And so that's a plus for him, depending on what your negatives are for interception. So do I think he can get better from a point per game standpoint? Yes. Do I think that he is appropriately ranked? Because for me also, this is where he is, which is QB7. I think you just have to understand, like, the running quarterbacks, when they hit, they're just going to have a higher ceiling. And if you value those guys, so Richardson, Kyler, I have those guys over him. I don't know where you guys, do, but for me, him and Joe Burrow are very similar. They're not going to run for a lot. They're going to be very good passers, and you're going to get very good, if not great, production out of them as well.
The difference for me, and we may see it this year, is just I feel more confident Burrow is going to throw the ball 640 times if he plays 17 games. Now, he's got more of an injury risk than Stroud does. You don't know with that San Francisco system if you're going to see a huge pass attempt number for Stroud. And so then you've got to be wildly efficient to put up the same type of passing numbers that Burrow would.
All right, so let me finish with this. Let's go a 4-point per passing touchdown league. After your top 4, who are 5, 6, and 7 in your rankings? 4-point per passing touchdown. Joe, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, look, see, this is the interesting thing. If you are doing the 4 or the 6, I work in relative position value, right? So in the Black Book, I talk very much about it moves the needle a little bit for guys like the Patrick Mahomes, the elite guys like that, where, I would put Patrick Mahomes number 1 in a 6-point per touchdown passing touchdown situation. Whereas, guys like Kyler Murray might get elevated a little bit because of their running ability. So it's small adjustments, but the relative value of these guys does not change all that much. So to me, looking at the board, again, Mahomes is my number 1 here on the quarterback board, followed by then Allen, Hurts, Lamar Jackson, who never seems to get enough credit. Anthony Richardson, I would still put ahead because the upside is just ridiculous. The upside is he could even finish as the QB1. Now, I'm not saying he's going to do that necessarily this year, but you have to almost kind of be prepared for that upside. And then I would have Burrow, Love, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, C.J. Stroud at 10. That would be my grouping there.
Okay. Jamie?
So
Heath, go ahead. Yeah.
You asked 5, 6, 7. For me, it'd be Richardson, Murray, Burrow.
That's in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. Richardson, Murray, Burrow. Jamie, how about you?
In 4 points?
Yeah.
Richardson, Murray, Daniels.
Wow.
Stroud, Burrow.
Wow.
All right, let's go to 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. Jamie, who's 5, 6, and 7 for you in 6-point after the big 4?
Richardson, Murray, Stroud, Burrow.
Okay, that's 8. Heath?
Burrow, Murray, Richardson.
Joe, and no major changes for you?
No, my 10 are my 10 based upon the offensive ecosystem they play in, based on the ability they have to score fantasy points, based on the weapon. So it's a bigger conglomerate the way I do the rankings. Whereas those 2 points, it's marginal difference. Like I said, the only thing it really does to me when you elevate those numbers is you're giving some of those elite guys like Mahomes, who could throw for 5,000 yards, even more of an edge, where he becomes a little bit more intriguing as a very early round pick, as opposed to waiting for the quarterbacks to start going. What I like about this year's in particular is you're going to get that, flare that goes up when somebody starts taking a quarterback, and then you're going to watch to see how they go. And if you wait, the fourth guy off the board is typically Lamar Jackson, who's won 2 MVPs and has rushed for 1,000 yards. And then that kind of ability to then just gauge the market. The question is, do you want to take a quarterback in that range when you're still passing on the big wide receivers? And all of us are in a lot of industry drafts. And I feel like there's typically a little bit more discipline than there are in the casual leagues. So there's an opportunity for you in casual leagues, I feel like, to wait on quarterback, pound the table for those wide receivers, and then get a little value later on. Because as we're talking about, maybe there isn't that much of a difference, statistically speaking, when all is said and done, between the Burrows, the Strouds, the Jordan Loves, or even Dak Prescott, who we forget last year had an incredible season, an incredible top 5 finish himself.
Yep. He's averaged, I think he's 24 or more fantasy points per game in 4 of his last 5 seasons, something like that. All right, we got to take a break. But if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. We will be right back with Breakout Quarterbacks.
Football action continues. Are you ready for this? Ready to take chances? As the gridiron is taken over by the Great White North. It's time to storm the fortress. It's time to fight on the battlefield. Catch the Canadian Football League on CBS Sports Network.
All right, so we've discussed Richardson and Stroud with some disagreement there about C.J. Stroud, but let's talk about guys that are going to be legit breakout quarterbacks this year. Jamie, who do you got?
Besides Richardson and Stroud, Heath sort of joked about this, but I think we can call Kyler Murray a re-breakout. The last 2 years have been very disappointing due to injury and some poor play. The 2 years prior to that were pretty amazing. And so now you give him, maybe his best receiver ever, which is a big ask because DeAndre Hopkins was very good. But it could be his best group ever. When you look at what Trey McBride did last year, and some of the other parts of Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch and Zay Jones and whatever else they have to offer. But with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the prospect that he looks like he can be, and 2 years removed from the ACL, I think Kyler Murray could have maybe his best season. So very excited about what we saw from him in the small sample size last year, because he was still running for about 30 yards a game. And we know that sets him apart from some of these other quarterbacks, again, the non-runners. But he's got the upside to be a top 5 quarterback, if not be in the top 3 conversation. Now, he's going to have to do some heavy lifting to get there, but he has that potential. So he's one for me. And then Jayden Daniels will be the other one. So just looking at what his potential is, 1,000-yard rusher in college. Whenever anybody asks me about Daniels, first thing I say is he could lead the position in rushing yards. It wouldn't be a huge surprise. And so if he gets that 800-yard mark, which I think is within, his reach if he stays healthy, that puts him in the top 10. And then if he can be, again, a 3,500 plus yard passer, that could put him in the top 5 conversation. So he's easily the one that, when you look at ADP, if you want to get past the first, 6 or 7 guys, that's when I think your radar should go up. But QB 8 to 10, I think, is where he should be drafted, because again, the upside is just immense if he stays healthy.
Yeah, and he's QB 14 in CBS ADP. So just over the last week on NFC, he's QB 12. Jayden Daniels. All right, so for Jamie, it is Richardson, Stroud, a re-breakout for Kyler Murray, and Jayden Daniels.
Joe? Yeah, I don't have Stroud as a breakout. I just don't disagree with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joe, who are your breakouts?
Well, Richardson is definitely the biggest one on that list. Daniels is my 2. Jamie and I usually have the same boards typically in terms of what we look like in value. We were just in the flex draft 2 weeks ago, and I was pretty much peeling stickers and putting on the board before he was making his selection. But Jayden Daniels is one of these guys that I think what's so great about Daniels is he's still going to be drafted as the 12th quarterback, right? So if you wait as long as you want for a quarterback, you could take him And if for some reason you're still just a little skittish about it and you need an insurance policy, the Cousins, the Jared Goffs, all those guys are still floating around there. And you're able to give yourself a little insurance if maybe September is rough and maybe there is a learning curve. Like, we have high expectations, but not everybody hits the ground running. Kyler Murray, I think, is a really interesting re-breakout. But the other one that I think could be a re-breakout, and I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes about that, is Justin Fields. Now, think about this. They're going to give you two numbers, 35, 25. The difference between them is 10. It's the number of years and age between Justin Fields and between Russell Wilson.
Hold on a second.
And,
Wait, let me get my calculator.
It's 10. It's
Okay,
10.
okay. It checks out.
It is 10. It checks out. So the math is good. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you already wasted a pick a couple years ago on Kenny Pickett. He wasn't the guy. The Russell Wilson thing, I think, was just an insurance policy where they just didn't want to rush whatever could happen with Justin Fields in terms of his getting comfortable again, shaking off the dust of a horrible offensive line he played with. But it's stunning to me that we forget, as fantasy players, maybe we always look pretty, but as fantasy players in 2022, this guy was QB6. He rushed for 1,100 yards, and he missed 2 games. He was doing that. He was running for his life a lot because the offensive line was so bad. The coaching was so bad at times. The continuity with offensive coordinators was troubling. Justin Fields, I'm old enough to remember what he looked like at Ohio State. I'm not saying he's going to be a perfect quarterback in the NFL, but from a fantasy standpoint, in Superflex leagues, I'm being aggressive on Justin Fields. I'd rather take Justin Fields and then a boring Derek Carr as my third quarterback to live with the upside of what Fields could be. Because if he gets back into that starting role sooner than later, he can absolutely become one of these guys that wins you Superflex leagues. And if he starts to play well and gets that job in September for whatever reason, injury to Russell Wilson, subpar play, whatever it might be, you've seen a lot of positive buzz here around Fields. I know the fumbles were an issue in the preseason game. That's going to be something you have to correct. But at the same time, I think with Fields, it's very clear if you're the Steelers, he's the future. If you believe in him, you need to play him and you need to make the future begin now. And if that happens sooner than later, he's going to be a guy that people are going to be picking up in single quarterback leagues too, because again, his upside is a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
He's the only backup quarterback I can think of, like, ever, basically. I don't know about that. That if he gets the job, he will be maybe some people will spend all of their fab on him. He will go for, right? What he is. Well,
rookie Trey Lance.
I don't know.
No, I don't think anyone did on Trey Lance.
Do you remember how high?
I do remember it being crazy, but I don't think it was like emptying the clip on Trey Lance. But
we know
people were aggressive.
Fields is a top 10 quarterback when he's healthy because he runs so much. Okay, so Anthony Richardson, Jayden Daniels, Justin Fields. Heath, how about you?
Yeah, I'll throw in the other rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, and I want to preface this by saying Caleb Williams is not Patrick Mahomes, but you can see why people watched the college tape and made that comparison. He already in his first preseason game is making those types of throws on the move that you're like, no, NFL quarterbacks are not supposed to be able to do that. And he does it. And he's got DJ Moore, he's got Keenan Allen, he's got Rome Odunze, the best receiving core a rookie's ever walked into, and just maybe the best receiving core in the NFL. I think he could run for 300 to 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And that kind of lowers the floor for what you have to do as a passer to be a top 5 quarterback. I've got him right behind Jayden Daniels, and something that Joe said that I know we all agree with, but just to reiterate it, like if you miss out on the quarterbacks that you want early, the rookie plus Jared Goff combination is the thing to do. You start Goff the first 2 games at home, see what the rookie is, and then hopefully start the league winning rookie the rest of the year.
Do you want to, though, draft 2 quarterbacks? Let's say you got a 5-man bench. Do you want that approach?
I don't want to do that if I spent a pick in the first 8 rounds on a quarterback.
No, I mean, obviously, like you're going in.
Right.
I'm getting one of Daniels or Williams. Like that's my game plan, And so, if that's your plan going in, do you draft the second quarterback? Like, do you target Goff on purpose?
Yeah.
Or Tua or whoever the case may be? Or do you just wait to pick up somebody off waivers? Again, knowing your league is important.
I mostly I have Goff behind Purdy and Tua and Lawrence, but I'm gonna bump Goff up if I draft one of those rookies because I think he's such a perfect. Because I don't have any doubts about Jared Goff at home, so I know I can start him in the first 2 weeks.
I don't disagree with that. What I'm getting at though is like, will you purposely sacrifice a bench spot to draft that quarterback, or will you just sort of say, okay, while Goff is better than the guys after him, the Staffords, the
right.
Rodgers, or will you just say, okay, I'll let somebody else take off, and sacrifice their bench? Or do you go in saying, I'm 5-man
No,
bench?
I'm double tapping quarterback. I'm taking rookie Goff.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you what, I would also say it depends on the guys. So if you see people taking second quarterbacks and you're seeing people just sort of doing that, then I'm more apt to want to make sure I get a Goff or a Cousins or one of those safer guys, because I don't want to fall behind a quarterback. I mean, let's not forget, too, the Commanders have a new coach. It's a new system. He's a rookie quarterback. Their offensive line's been remade. There's a lot of ifs there. As much as we all love Jayden Daniels, let's not pretend like there aren't some ifs there. It's not pretend like the Chicago Bears have been a quarterback development factory either in the last couple of years, because they haven't been. So, there's a lot that could go wrong here, too. But if you see people not drafting that second quarterback and you see those guys lasting, then maybe I'm more apt to say, you know what, let me just roll with Daniels and see what goes, and I'll try to pick a Matthew Stafford up off the waiver wire or something like that. But I do agree with Heath. Like, Goff would be the ideal one, just because the upside of Goff or even a Cousins is, again, a guy that's probably a QB1 at the end of the day. So at least you covered yourself, but you've given yourself that lottery ticket for the upside of a league winner. I don't like Goff or Cousins is winning you a league, but Jayden Daniels might.
All right. I mean, some people would argue that maybe Goff would, because he's got the more favorable schedule than he's ever had. It's weird to point out, though, that he's got a lot of indoor games. Like one in the regular season. What did we say it? Like one outdoor game in the fantasy?
Two, I think.
Two?
Three in the season overall.
Three in the season overall. Everything else is indoors somewhere.
Yeah. But last year, for what it's worth, and I think even the year before, he wasn't anything special on the road indoors. It was always home. There haven't been that many road indoor games for him, but it's always been like home versus away, not indoor versus outdoor. But also, like I said, I mean, last year they ran for 25-ish touchdowns, 26 touchdowns. If they just start throwing the ball more near the end zone or a little less successful, he could go from 30 to 35 touchdowns. And he's been basically a top 12 guy each of the last 2 years, like right on the cusp. So I'm going to do the Breakout-O-Meter, and that's how we're going to end the show. You just tell me 0 through 10. How like likely do you think a breakout is? A truly like really good season from Jordan Love.
I think Jordan Love already had it last year, so I'm going to say 10 because I think he could build on it. The only thing, I mean, now you have continuity, so, and maybe a healthy Christian Watson, so wheels up for Jordan Love, man. That guy was stunning in the last 8 games. 18 touchdowns and 1 pick. Fantastic. That's the breakout already.
Okay, guys, Jordan Love?
I would agree. 9.
Better than he was last year?
Yeah.
3.
Brock Purdy. Better than he was last year.
It's so hard to say because by the time people listening to this thing,
3.
Yeah, everyone's quiet.
3.
Yeah, I'll say 4.
Yeah, I'll go with 3 too. I'm gonna even go lower than the 4 just because every year we see teams that lose the Super Bowl just don't react well. Things fall apart. Just go watch the Eagles season from last year and everybody else the last couple of years.
Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, 6 should be one of his best seasons.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 5. I need to be proven at this point. And I was very high on Trevor Lawrence coming into his, his college career and then into the NFL, but I got to see it at this point too. Last year I had high expectations and they were disappointing. He was
7.
And I was going to bring up Will.
The more I dislike it, the more Heath likes it. This is great. I love this.
And a 7 on Tua too.
We talked about Levis in the sleeper show, so we will leave it at that. Joe Pisapia, thank you very much for joining us here on Fantasy Football today, and tell us how we can find your content.
My content. Boy, oh boy. You want to see my content? All right. You can see it over on the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and Betting Pros and at Sports Grid TV every Sunday, hosting the NFL pregame show there. And of course, go get your Fantasy Football Black Book over on Amazon too. Just updated this week with all new RPV for everybody. So go get that. And thanks for having me, boys. It's great to talk football with y'all.
We've got Chris Harris coming up for running back breakouts right now, and we'll talk to you soon on Fantasy Football Today.